A charming yet socially awkward billionaire CEO finds himself in a bizarre situation when his secret crush on his beautiful CFO collides with a magical twist. After wishing on a shooting star, he suddenly gains the ability to hear women's thoughts. Before we begin, let us know in the comments where you're watching us from, and please like this video to support the channel. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. William adjusted his cufflinks for the third time, smoothing the already impeccable fabric of his suit jacket. The mirror reflected a man who looked every bit the part of a confident billionaire CEO, broad-shouldered, neatly groomed, with the kind of easy smile that should have charmed anyone he spoke to. The problem, of course, was that the image was a lie. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the evening ahead. Outside the door, the sounds of the company gala buzzed louder, glasses clinking and laughter spilling over the soft music. "You've got this," William muttered to his reflection. "Just talk. Like a normal person." Normal people, however, didn't rehearse small talk in their mirrors or worry for hours about the right way to say, "How are you?" without sounding like a robot. But tonight was different. Tonight, Amelia would be there, and he was determined to make an impression that didn't end with her raised eyebrows and a polite, "That's nice." Stepping into the grand hall, William was greeted by a mix of investors, board members, and employees. He smiled and shook hands, his responses automatic. But his gaze kept darting across the room, searching for a familiar face. And there she was. Amelia Clark. His CFO. Efficient, brilliant, and possibly the most terrifying person he'd ever met. Not because she was unkind, quite the opposite. Amelia was unfailingly polite, professional, and composed. But her eyes were sharp, and her voice had that subtle edge of disapproval whenever William stumbled through one of his less graceful moments. Her dark hair was swept into an elegant twist, and the navy dress she wore was simple but devastating. William's mouth went dry. Great. Talking was already hard enough without her looking like that. He made his way over, nearly colliding with a waiter and offering an awkward half-smile as he sidestepped a tray of champagne flutes. Amelia glanced up, and her eyes softened for a split second before settling into polite neutrality. "Amelia," he greeted, his voice a touch too loud. "You look very CFO tonight." Her brows inched upward. "That's a compliment, I assume?" "Yes. I mean you look great. Not that you don't always look great," he blurted, wincing inwardly. Never mind." Amelia's lips twitched, the barest hint of amusement. "Thank you, William." God, why was he like this? Clearing his throat, he shifted topics with all the subtlety of a car crash. "So, how's the finance stuff?" "Thrilling," she deadpanned. "Just closed the Eastbridge acquisition this morning. I emailed you the report." "Right. Read it. Very comprehensive." She tilted her head slightly. "You read all 80 pages?" He swallowed. "Absolutely." She arched a brow. "It was 60 pages." "Oh, right. 60. I meant 60. Amelia's eyes glinted with something almost like pity. "Of course." William bit back a groan. Fantastic. Another win for Team Heart. By the time the evening wound down, he was exhausted, mostly from trying not to humiliate himself further. As Amelia excused herself to talk to a group of investors, William slunk out onto the balcony for some air. The city sprawled below, lights glittering like 1,000 tiny stars. He leaned against the railing, sighing. "Great job, William. Next time, try not to sound like a malfunctioning AI." A streak of light caught his eye, a shooting star arcing across the sky. Without thinking, he muttered, "I just wish I could understand what women want. Specifically Amelia. But women in general would be great too." He chuckled at himself, already regretting the self-pitying tone. Wishes were for kids and rom-coms, not billionaires who couldn't get through a single conversation without sounding like an idiot. Shaking his head, he turned back inside, calling it a night. The next morning, William awoke to a pounding headache and a vague sense of unease. he groaned, dragging himself out of bed and stumbling through his morning routine. It wasn't until he reached the office that things got weird. His assistant, Chloe, greeted him with her usual bright smile. "Morning, Mr. Hart. Coffee's on your desk and oh my god, he looks tired. Did he even sleep? Maybe I should move his 11 o'clock. William blinked. Sorry, what? Chloe's smile faltered. I said coffee's on your desk, sir. No, you said. He cut himself off, staring at her. Her mouth wasn't moving, but her voice, no, her thoughts, were as clear as if she'd spoken aloud. He rubbed his temples. Okay, wow. I really do need coffee. As he moved through the office, it got worse. Passing interns and analysts bombarded him with an endless stream of inner monologues, comments about spreadsheets, lunch plans, and horrifyingly his hair. He hurried into his office, slamming the door with a bit too much force. This was a stress thing. It had to be. Maybe he was finally cracking under the pressure. Then Amelia walked in, tablet in hand. William, we need to talk about the quarterly projections before he decides to approve this disaster. Honestly, how does he even manage this company sometimes? I swear if he makes that awkward face again, I might. William stared at her, color draining from his face. Oh no. Amelia frowned. Are you feeling all right? He forced a smile, stiff and unnatural. Never better. But internally, all he could think was, I'm going to die. This is it. I'm actually going to die. William spent most of the morning hiding in his office, desperately hoping his newfound ability would just turn off. Maybe it was a stress-induced hallucination. That was a thing, right? He'd Google it later. For now, all he could do was sip his coffee and pretend he wasn't hearing the innermost thoughts of every woman who crossed his path. The door swung open, nearly making him choke. Amelia stepped in, tablet in hand and eyes sharp as ever. We need to go over the Reiner proposal before the 3 o'clock call. I emailed you the latest figures. Oh, right. Of course. He stammered, scrambling to minimize a tab of stress management techniques for executives. Lead the way. Amelia sat across from him, crossing one leg over the other. She looked every bit the efficient CFO, composed, no nonsense, the kind of woman who could silence a room with a single glance. But her thoughts painted a different picture, one layered with fatigue and a hint of frustration. If I have to remind him about the margins one more time, I swear. William grimaced, determined to stay focused. I looked over the margins, he offered quickly. And I agree they're problematic. Amelia's eyes narrowed. Problematic? Right, sorry, what I meant was, we should reevaluate the cost projections, especially with the Reiner deal. I was thinking we could adjust the supplier contracts to offset. She blinked, momentarily thrown. That's exactly what I was going to suggest. Is it? He forced a laugh, running a hand through his hair. Great minds, I guess. Her gaze lingered a moment too long, suspicion flickering in her eyes. Right. As she launched into a rundown of the financials, William's attention kept slipping. Amelia's voice was calm and measured, but her thoughts, oh God, her thoughts were merciless. If he touches his hair one more time, I'm going to lose it. Focus, William. Just once focus. He snatched his hand away from his hair like it had burst into flames. Sorry, he blurted. It's just a nervous habit. Amelia's eyebrows inched upward. What is? Nothing. I mean, never mind. She stared, suspicion deepening, but thankfully chose not to press. William exhaled slowly, making a mental note to superglue his hands to the desk if necessary. Over the next few days, the voices didn't fade. If anything, they got louder. Meetings became minefields of unspoken grievances and snarky asides. Even passing by his assistant's desk was a sensory overload of to-do lists and snack preferences. But Amelia's thoughts were the hardest to ignore. Beyond the surface-level critiques of his awkwardness and her daily frustrations, there were moments of startling vulnerability, Flashes of loneliness she hid beneath her sharp wit, fears about the company's future, the sting of betrayal from a past business partner she still hadn't forgiven. She stayed late every night, poring over spreadsheets in her office until even the janitorial staff had clocked out. More than once, William found himself pausing outside her door, catching fragments of weary, unspoken admissions. "I can't keep doing this alone. I just need one person I can trust." Her exhaustion tugged at something in his chest, something deeper than guilt, something dangerously close to affection. He knew he shouldn't be listening. It was wrong. Unethical. But every time he tried to tune it out, that small, aching voice cut through the noise. By Thursday, he'd had enough. They were in the middle of a tense negotiation with Reiner Industries, the conference room packed with executives. William had spent the entire meeting hyper-aware of Amelia beside him, of the way her fingers drummed impatiently against the table, and the way her eyes narrowed every time Reiner spoke. Reiner leaned back, a smug grin stretching across his face. "Our offer is more than fair, Mr. Hart. If you're not interested, we have other options." Amelia's thoughts flashed hot and furious. Unbelievable. He's bluffing. If William rolls over, I'm quitting. Panic flared in William's chest. No way. No way was he letting that happen. Clearing his throat, he forced a calm smile. "We appreciate the offer, Mr. Reiner," he began smoothly. "But considering the recent market shifts, I think a 15% adjustment on your side would be more appropriate. After all, I doubt your board would be thrilled if you let this deal slip for a few percentage points." Reiner's smirk faltered. Amelia's head snapped towards him, eyes wide. "How did he?" Reiner scoffed, but his confidence wavered. "I suppose we could review those numbers." As the meeting adjourned, Amelia rounded on William the second they were alone. "That was unexpected," she said carefully. "You don't usually go off script like that." William rubbed the back of his neck. "I just had a hunch." "A hunch," she repeated flatly. He winced. "A really good hunch?" Her eyes narrowed. "Right." Before he could make things worse, Amelia's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, sighing. "I have to finalize the quarterly reports. Try not to make any more deals based on hunches while I'm gone." "Noted," he managed, watching her retreat down the hall. She turned a corner, but her thoughts lingered, raw and weary. Since when does he actually care about the numbers? Maybe I've misjudged him. Or maybe this is just another game. The guilt settled heavy in his stomach. He knew he should come clean about everything. But the idea of Amelia's eyes darkening with betrayal again, of her walking away for good, was enough to glue his feet to the floor. So, for now, he focused on what he could fix. He called Chloe into his office, rattling off a list of adjustments for Amelia's project, shifts in funding, reallocating resources, and pushing back deadlines she hadn't yet asked for but had definitely been worrying about. Chloe frowned. "Are you sure, sir? Ms. Clark hasn't submitted these requests." "She will," he said quickly. "Just trust me on this one." She eyed him warily. "Right." As Chloe left, William slumped back, running a hand over his face. God, he was a mess. A mind-reading, guilt-ridden mess. But when Amelia walked by his office that evening, her phone pressed to her ear and her eyes a fraction less tired, William couldn't help the small smile that tugged at his lips. Maybe if he couldn't tell her the truth, not yet, then at least he could use this curse to make things right. For now, that would have to be enough. The relief William felt after helping Amelia's project move forward was short-lived. He hadn't even begun to figure out how to break the truth to her, or if he ever could, when the next crisis struck. Amelia's project, the one she'd been working on for months, was hanging by a thread. A competitor, Grandson Holdings, blindsided them with a similar pitch to one of their biggest clients. The boardroom was electric with tension, eyes darting between PowerPoints and projected profit losses. William sat at the head of the table, but all his attention was on Amelia as she presented the updated figures. Her voice was steady, but her thoughts were a whirlwind of panic and self-reproach. They're going to pull the funding. God, I should have seen this coming. If I lose this deal, I'll never hear the end of it. William clenched his fists under the table, fighting the urge to blurt out reassurance. He couldn't help but admire the way Amelia held herself together, even when her thoughts were spiraling. But when the head of Grandson Holdings leaned back, a smirk curling his lips, and said, "Your projections seem optimistic, Miss Clark." Amelia's resolve wavered. She faltered, just a fraction, but William caught it. So did everyone else. William leaned forward smoothly, eyes fixed on Grandson. "Actually, they're conservative, considering the quarterly trends in the southeast sector. Perhaps you missed the latest report?" Grandson's smirk flickered. Page 34. William added, all confidence. "I'd be happy to forward it again." Amelia blinked, momentarily thrown. Yes. That's right. Of course it's right." Her thoughts snapped. "But how did he?" Grandson scowled, backpedaling with some half-hearted remark about reviewing the numbers. Amelia picked up the momentum, detailing their next steps with renewed precision. By the time the meeting adjourned, the client seemed reassured, and Grandson's expression was sour enough to make William's day. As the boardroom emptied, Amelia approached, her eyes narrowed in appraising. "That was impressive," she said slowly. "I didn't realize you'd been keeping such a close eye on the details." William shrugged, feigning nonchalance. "Just doing my part." Her skepticism was almost palpable. "Right. Well, thank you." Her internal monologue, however, was less grateful. "There's no way he just happened to know that. Either I'm losing my mind, or he's hiding something." The guilt twisted hard and fast in William's gut. He needed air. The opportunity to apologize or confess came sooner than he expected. "Dinner?" he suggested awkwardly, catching Amelia off guard. "To celebrate. I mean, if you're not busy." Her surprise was quickly masked with professionalism. "I suppose I could spare a few hours." "Great," he said, relief flooding his voice a bit too quickly. "That's great." He spent the next hour second-guessing his entire existence, and mentally kicking himself for every stupid thing he'd said in the past 6 months. The restaurant was upscale but not pretentious, all soft lighting and quiet jazz. Amelia slid into the booth across from him, glancing around with a faintly amused smile. "I would have pegged you for more of a steakhouse type," she remarked. William cleared his throat. "I can be full of surprises. I'm starting to notice," she replied dryly. There was a pause, not uncomfortable, but charged with the weight of everything unsaid. William fumbled for a topic, something safe and non-work related. Do you come here often?" Amelia raised a brow. "Did you just use a bad pickup line on me?" Heat flared in his cheeks. No. I just meant..." She smirked, the tension easing a fraction. "Relax, William. I'm kidding." He chuckled, a bit too high-pitched, and immediately wanted to fling himself into the sun. Somehow, they found a rhythm, talking about their favorite restaurants, movies, the worst company retreats they'd ever suffered through. William hadn't laughed this much in, well, longer than he could remember. But every time Amelia's eyes softened or her lips curved into that small, private smile, guilt tugged at him, raw and unrelenting. Her thoughts were quieter here, less guarded. "It's just dinner. Doesn't mean anything. But why is he actually nice?" William's smile faltered, and Amelia's eyes narrowed slightly. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," he said quickly. "Just thinking. Dangerous." She deadpanned, taking a sip of her wine. A laugh escaped him, surprised and warm. "You're not wrong." The moment stretched, comfortable and almost fragile. Amelia leaned back, her eyes sharper now, testing. "So, what's your angle?" "My what?" "Come on," she pressed lightly. "The sudden interest in the details, the dinner invitation, if I didn't know better, I'd say you were trying to impress me." His heart stuttered. "I know, I just..." "Oh my God, he actually is." He inhaled sharply. "I just wanted to." The words tumbled out too fast, raw and unfiltered. I just wanted you to see that I'm not. That I can be. Competent? She supplied dryly. Not incompetent, he corrected weakly. Her eyes glinted with something unreadable. Well, you've managed that much. The fondness in her voice, however faint, wrapped around his chest and squeezed. He opened his mouth to respond, but the guilt surged too fast, too heavy. Before he could stop himself, the words spilled out. God, I can't keep doing this. Amelia's brows knit. Doing what? This, he blurted. Pretending. I haven't been honest with you. She went still. What are you talking about? Panic spiked, but he couldn't stop now. I know things. About you. Things you didn't say. Her eyes darkened, confusion shifting to something harder. What the hell does that mean? I can explain. He rushed out, but her expression was already closing off. Amelia stood abruptly, the legs of her chair scraping harshly against the floor. You've been, spying on me? No, it's not like that, I swear. She shook her head, eyes cold. I knew it was too good to be true. And just like that, she was gone, her heels clicking sharply against the marble as she strode out. The restaurant blurred around him, the distant clink of glasses muffled under the roaring in his ears. William sank back into his chair, breath stuttering. His fingers trembled where they gripped the edge of the table, the chill of her absence settling deep. He'd known it would end like this, of course he had. You didn't lie to the one person you couldn't afford to lose and expect a happy ending. But watching her walk away still hurt more than he thought possible. William spent the night in his office, the city lights casting fractured reflections across the windows. Her last words echoed, raw and unforgiving, until he wanted to claw at his ears to drown them out. I knew it was too good to be true. He sank into his chair, hands trembling. For the first time in weeks, there was silence, no whispers of half-formed thoughts or unspoken judgments. Just the hollow quiet and the distant hum of traffic below. The realization came slow and heavy. Amelia was gone, and this was his fault. He squeezed his eyes shut, dragging in a shuddering breath. Maybe he should have left things alone. Maybe he should have just tried harder to be normal, to figure things out without listening in where he didn't belong. But it was too late for maybes. The door creaked open, and Max leaned in, brows knit. Jesus, Will, you look like hell. Thanks, William muttered, scrubbing a hand over his face. Max stepped inside, the door clicking shut behind him. Did something happen with Amelia? She stormed out of here earlier like she was ready to burn the place down. William let out a broken laugh. You could say that. Max's eyes narrowed. You didn't, God, tell me you didn't try one of your terrible pickup lines again. I wish, William said weakly. Then what happened? William stared at his hands, fingers twisting and untwisting. I told her. Part of it anyway. Told her what? That I've been hearing her thoughts. Max went still. Okay, that's definitely not where I thought this was going. It's not a joke, William snapped. I made a wish on a stupid shooting star, and now I can hear what women think. Or I could. Max stared, open-mouthed. Right. So, you've finally cracked. Got it. I'll call the board, I'm serious. Max hesitated at the raw edge in William's voice. Wait, you're actually... William slumped back, the fight bleeding out of him. I messed everything up, Max. She hates me. Well, yeah, Max said slowly, dragging a chair over to sit. Women usually don't like being told you've been reading their minds. I didn't ask for this, William bit out. I was trying to fix things. For her. Max blew out a breath, raking a hand through his hair. Okay. Let's say I believe you, what exactly did you tell her? Not everything, he admitted. Just that I knew things she hadn't said. That I wanted to help. Max grimaced. Yeah, that sounds about as creepy as it gets. William groaned, head falling into his hands. Fantastic. There was a beat of silence before Max sighed, clapping a hand to his shoulder. Look, maybe you can fix this. Apologize. Actually tell her the truth this time. She'll never believe me, William muttered. Not with that attitude, Max said dryly. Or you could just let her think you're a stalker. Your call. The words lodged in William's chest, heavy and aching. But what choice did he have? Even if she thought he was insane, even if she never forgave him, she deserved the truth. He couldn't breathe around the guilt. The next morning, he was on Amelia's doorstep before sunrise, eyes red-rimmed and tie crooked. It took 3 knocks before the door swung open, revealing Amelia in sweats and a faded MIT hoodie, eyes cold. What do you want? To explain, he said quickly. Please. She hesitated, fingers tight around the doorknob. You've got 2 minutes. Right, he breathed, nerves frayed and raw. Okay, so God, this is going to sound insane, but just bear with me. Her eyes narrowed. Tick-tock. He inhaled shakily. Look, you remember the company gala last month? There was a shooting star, and I made a wish. Amelia blinked. You made a wish. Right. That I could understand women better. And the next morning I could hear your thoughts. She stared. Are you seriously telling me you made a wish on a star? I know how it sounds. No, I don't think you do. She bit out, eyes darkening. You're actually standing on my doorstep at 7 in the morning trying to convince me that your invasion of my privacy was magic? It wasn't like that, you're unbelievable. She snapped, turning to shut the door. He panicked. You hate your coffee black, he blurted. You only drink it that way because it keeps people from talking to you in the mornings. And you always double-check the numbers yourself because you don't trust anyone to get it right. And you're terrified that the board will sell the company out from under you because of what happened with your last job. She went deathly still. I'm sorry, he choked out. I know how it sounds, I know I should have told you sooner, but I was trying to help. Please, Amelia. I just wanted to fix things. She stared at him, shock bleeding into betrayal. Her voice was a raw whisper. Stay away from me. And then the door slammed, leaving him alone in the hallway with the sound of his heart breaking. The days blurred after that. Without Amelia's voice, without anyone's, the silence was deafening. His head ached, splitting and raw, but he forced himself into work, signing papers and shaking hands without hearing the whispers of unspoken judgments. He avoided meetings, avoided everyone, but every night, he found himself rereading Amelia's reports, forwarding resources to her department, making calls to secure partnerships, anything to make sure her project stayed on track. It wasn't enough, not even close. But it was all he could do. The next board meeting was tense, but the numbers spoke for themselves. Amelia's project was gaining traction fast, investors rallying behind it with new funding. As she presented the updates, eyes hard and voice steady, William watched her from the back of the room, throat tight. When she mentioned the unexpected partnerships that had saved the project, her eyes flickered briefly to him, cold and untrusting. His chest ached, but he didn't move, didn't speak. He just sat there, fingers curling against the armrests, and let the silence eat him alive. William hadn't spoken to Amelia directly in weeks. Not since she'd shut the door in his face with that fractured look of betrayal. Their conversations were reduced to clipped emails and tense meetings where she avoided his eyes and referred to him only as Mr. Hart. The silence was suffocating. But every time he tried to apologize again, the words caught in his throat, too late, too hollow. He couldn't blame her. So he did the only thing he could think of. He kept supporting her project quietly, funneling resources her way, making calls to investors, and signing off on every budget increase without a second thought. It wasn't enough, not even close, but it was all he had left. It was after one of those long board meetings, the room emptying out slowly, when Amelia finally cornered him. William was packing up his notes when her voice cut through the silence, cool and sharp. Can I have a word? He nearly dropped his pen, swallowing hard. Of course. She shut the door behind her, arms crossed and eyes flinty. What are you doing? Sorry? This, she snapped, gesturing broadly. The funding, the partnerships, signing off on every ridiculous budget request I send your way. Why are you still helping me? William's mouth went dry. I just want to support the project. It's a good idea. Don't, she bit out. Don't lie to me again. The word stung, but he forced himself to breathe. I'm not. She scoffed, but the edge wavered. After everything you pulled, you really expect me to believe that? He hesitated, fingers curling against the edge of the table. I know I messed up, he said quietly. I know you have no reason to trust me. But I just wanted to help. Because I care about the project. About you. She flinched, jaw tightening. Don't. I'm not expecting anything. He rushed out. I don't, God, Amelia, I know you probably hate me, and I don't blame you. I can't stand the idea of you failing because of me. Her eyes flickered, something raw cracking through the ice. So what, you're doing this out of guilt? Maybe at first, he admitted, voice thick. But now I just want you to succeed. Even if you never speak to me again. The silence stretched, her gaze unsteady. Finally, Amelia let out a shaky breath, pinching the bridge of her nose. You're an idiot, she muttered. Yeah, William agreed weakly. She glared half-heartedly. Don't agree with me. Right. Sorry. A faint exhale, almost like a laugh. Amelia's eyes softened, just a fraction. God, I really must be losing it, she muttered. Fine. You want to help? You can start by being honest for once. His heart stuttered painfully. Does that mean a truce? She said flatly. Nothing more. Don't get any ideas. He tried and failed to smother a relieved grin. Right. Of course. No ideas. Her eyes narrowed. I mean it, William. I know, he said quickly, but his heart was pounding, breath catching on the edges of a smile he couldn't quite hide. The next few weeks were different. Awkward mostly. Amelia was polite but distant, her words clipped and efficient. But she stopped avoiding him in meetings, stopped tensing every time he entered the room. It wasn't much, but it was a start. They worked late most nights, combing through spreadsheets and investor pitches, Amelia rattling off figures and William nodding along, trying not to stare too long or too obviously. It was one of those late nights, papers spread across the conference table, when Amelia sighed, rubbing at her temples. If I have to look at one more column of numbers, I might snap, she muttered. William chuckled nervously. Maybe we should call it a night. She glanced at him, eyes tired but warm. For once, I actually agree. He cleared his throat, heart hammering. We could grab something to eat. If you're not busy. She arched a brow. Dinner. Or coffee, he blurted. Or nothing. Never mind. Amelia's lips twitched, amusement glinting. You really are terrible at this. He winced. Sorry. Dinner's fine. She sighed, gathering her papers. But if you try anything, I'm leaving. He blinked. Right. Of course. No trying anything. She smirked faintly, already heading for the door. You're hopeless. It was a small Italian place, dim lighting and red-checkered tablecloths, the kind of restaurant that didn't match their business suits but felt warmer than a boardroom. They talked about the project at first, safe topics, numbers, forecasts. But then Amelia made a snide comment about one of their more pompous investors, and William nearly choked on his drink laughing. She rolled her eyes. Oh my God, you're actually 12. I know. He really does look like a walrus. William spluttered, and her lips quirked, a real smile breaking through. The tension eased bit by bit. They shared stories about their worst business meetings, the time William accidentally insulted a French ambassador's tie at a fundraiser, Amelia's disastrous first interview where she'd called her future boss by the wrong name. By the time dessert arrived, William's nerves had settled into something warmer, softer. Amelia toyed with her fork, gaze flickering. So, why did you really help with the project? He swallowed hard. I told you the truth. She cut in, eyes steady. No more deflecting. His mouth went dry, heart pounding. Because I care, he admitted quietly. About you. Not just the project. She stilled, eyes widening. I know it's too late. He rushed on. I know I messed everything up, and I won't blame you if you never forgive me, but I had to say it. Even if that's all it is. Amelia's gaze softened, the walls cracking inch by inch. You're an idiot, she said, but the words were softer this time, almost fond. Yeah, he breathed, dazed. She huffed a laugh, shaking her head. God help me, I really must be losing it. His heart lurched. Does that mean it means? She interrupted, rolling her eyes. You're paying for dinner. And if you even think about pulling something like that again, I will kill you. A grin broke out, wide and unguarded. Aye, right. Of course. She sighed, but the smile lingered at the corners of her mouth. Hopeless, she muttered. But she didn't pull away when his fingers brushed hers on the walk back, and William's heart soared. Their second dinner was planned unlike the first, but that didn't stop William's palms from sweating through 2 sets of shirt sleeves and a jacket. Max's text, "Stop sweating, you're not proposing," didn't help either. He nearly turned around 3 times before reaching the restaurant, a quiet French bistro on the corner of 5th, just secluded enough to avoid running into any board members. Amelia was already there, flipping through the menu, her hair falling loose over one shoulder. She glanced up when he approached, lips curling slightly. You're late. Yeah, sorry, I couldn't decide if the blue tie or the gray tie was blue, she said, smirking. Definitely blue. He blinked, relief untangling the knots in his chest. Oh. Good. Amelia arched a brow. You always this nervous? Only when I'm out with the CFO. He managed, cheeks warming. She rolled her eyes, but her gaze softened. Hopeless, she muttered, but it lacked bite. They ordered, Amelia the salmon, William something with a name he couldn't pronounce, and the conversation started out stilted and awkward, punctuated by 2 long silences and nervous laughter. William cleared his throat for the 4th time, fumbling with his water glass. So, you're not going to fire me, right? Amelia snorted into her wine, eyes glinting. Considering you're my boss, I think that's your call. Right, he said quickly. Of course. Just making sure. She sighed, but her lips twitched. Relax, William. You can stop acting like I'm going to bite. His brain, unhelpfully, supplied at least 3 inappropriate responses to that, and he nearly choked on his drink. Amelia's eyes narrowed, a smirk tugging at the corners of her mouth. You're hopeless, she muttered, but her foot brushed his under the table, soft and almost shy, and William's breath caught. They talked more easily after that. About the new software implementation, Max's latest disaster of a budget meeting, Amelia's penchant for old war films. William chuckled, half dazed. Wait, you actually watched those? Amelia's eyes narrowed. Is that a problem? No, I just didn't peg you for a black and white person. She smirked. I have layers. Like an onion? Her eyes narrowed further. You're an idiot. He grinned, warmth unfurling slow and soft in his chest. Yeah, but I make a pretty good onion ring. Amelia's snort dissolved into laughter, the sound bright and unguarded, and William was suddenly, terrifyingly sure that he was in way too deep. They lingered over dessert, forks idly scraping the remains of crème brûlée. Amelia's eyes softened, fingers tracing the rim of her glass. Her voice dipped, tentative. So, how long? He blinked. How long what? Have you? She paused, exhaling. Felt this way? Oh, he breathed, heat prickling his neck. I am a while. Since. God, probably since that board meeting last year where you tore apart Jonathan's entire presentation without blinking. Her brows lifted. That was almost a year ago. Yeah, he mumbled, rubbing the back of his neck. It's been a while. Amelia's eyes softened, but her smirk returned. You really are hopeless. His lips twitched. You keep saying that. Because it's true, she muttered, but her foot nudged his again, soft and lingering, and William's chest squeezed painfully. By the time they left, the sky was dark and cool, streetlights flickering softly. William hesitated, fingers curling against the door handle, words tangling on his tongue. Amelia paused beside him, brow arching. Something you want to say? Just thanks, he mumbled. For this. She rolled her eyes but didn't pull away. You really need to stop thanking me for doing normal human things. Right, he said quickly. Sorry. She sighed, but her lips quirked. Hopeless, she muttered for the 10th time, and William's grin broke free. He didn't let himself reach for her hand, but his fingers twitched with the urge. The following weeks were different. Their truce held, tentative but steady. Amelia stopped glaring daggers in meetings, even smirked when William tripped over his own presentations. They shared lunch more often than not, debating mergers between bites of takeout and trading half-hearted insults over spreadsheets. William's nerves never really settled, but the warmth in Amelia's eyes when she smiled, soft and guarded and real, eased some of the knots in his chest. One evening, paperwork scattered between them, Amelia sighed, stretching her arms above her head. If I have to look at one more acquisition proposal, I'm quitting, she groaned. William chuckled, nerves fraying. We could, take a break. Maybe. Grab coffee or something. Amelia's eyes flickered, amusement glinting. Is that your way of asking me out? He nearly dropped his pen. No. I mean, yes. Kind of. Her smirk softened, eyes warm. You're terrible at this. She sighed. Sorry, he mumbled, cheeks burning. Relax, she said, nudging his knee under the table. Coffee sounds nice. He exhaled slowly, heart pounding loud in his ears. Right. Cool. Amelia chuckled, shaking her head. Hopeless, she muttered, but her eyes were fond, and William's grin ached with how much he wanted this. They left the office late, city lights glinting off car windows, and Amelia didn't pull away when their fingers brushed. William hesitated at her car, heart pounding. Amelia, She glanced up, eyes soft. Nothing. He mumbled quickly, heat prickling his neck. Just drive safe. Amelia's lips twitched. You're hopeless. She sighed for the millionth time, but her voice was warm, her fingers brushing his briefly before pulling back. William barely remembered the drive home, too giddy and breathless and ridiculously in love. He was still smiling stupidly at the ceiling when Max called, voice dry and unimpressed. Tell me you didn't just call me at midnight to giggle about your crush. Max deadpanned. I know. William spluttered, cheeks burning. Right. Max sighed. You're hopeless. I'm hanging up now. Go to sleep, lover boy. Max snorted, the line clicking dead. But sleep didn't come easy, not with Amelia's smile lingering behind his eyelids and the warmth of her touch burning soft and steady in his chest. William grinned into his pillow, heart fluttering like a nervous teenager. Yeah. He was hopeless. But for once, that didn't seem like such a bad thing. The first few weeks were almost easy. Awkward, sure, with William stumbling through every other sentence and Amelia smirking at his expense, but easy in a way that made William's heart feel too big for his chest. Their lunch breaks stretched longer, their after-hours work sessions more frequent, filled with inside jokes and half-hidden smiles that left him grinning long after she'd gone. Max's texts, "Stop smiling, you look like a lovesick idiot," didn't help. But then the whispers started. William heard them first from Chloe, who half-mumbled something about HR and fraternization policies, eyes flicking away guiltily. Then from Max, who sighed loudly over lunch. You really had to date the CFO? Max grumbled, picking at his fries. Couldn't fall for, I don't know, an intern or something? William choked. She'd kill me. Max snorted. Pretty sure she's going to kill you either way. You know half the office thinks you're only dating her to secure her loyalty for the board elections, right? William's stomach twisted. That's ridiculous. Yeah, well, Max shrugged, mouth twisting. Rumors don't care about the truth. By the time the first article dropped, Billionaire CEO caught an office romance with CFO, strategic or sincere, the damage was done. Amelia stormed into his office, slamming the magazine down hard enough to rattle the glass paperweight. What the hell is this? She snapped. William winced, eyes darting to the headline. Amelia, is this why you've been so attentive? She bit out, eyes flinty. Because you knew the board elections were coming up. What? No! He blurted, rising so fast his chair squeaked. I would never, I didn't even. Her eyes narrowed. So it's just a coincidence that this comes out right when your numbers are slipping? William flinched, throat tight. I didn't know about the article. I swear. Right, she said flatly. So I'm supposed to believe you're not just using me to clean up your image? His heart lurched, panic fraying his voice. God, Amelia, no. I can't believe this. She muttered, pinching the bridge of her nose. I can't believe I trusted you. William's hands trembled, helpless. Amelia, please. She stepped back, jaw tight. I can't do this right now. She bit out, turning sharply on her heel. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving William to sag against his desk, breath catching painfully in his chest. The next week was brutal. Amelia avoided him at every turn, eyes hard and voice clipped, her walls rebuilt brick by brick. William tried, he tried, leaving too many voicemails, sending half-written emails only to delete them before pressing send. He caught her in the hall once, reaching out on instinct. Amelia, wait! Her eyes snapped to his hand, cold and warning. Don't, she bit out. He let his hand fall, throat tight. Can we talk? There's nothing to talk about, she said flatly, brushing past without looking back. William's heart sank, guilt curling sharp and unrelenting. That night, Max called, voice gruff but not unkind. Give her space, Will, he sighed. She's pissed, and she's right to be. I know, William muttered, scrubbing a hand over his face. God, I know. But I didn't, Max, you believe me, right? A sigh, tired and heavy. I want to, Max admitted. But that's not up to me, man. William hung up, chest aching, and tried not to think about the look in Amelia's eyes, hurt and betrayed and so tired. The days dragged, Amelia's silence suffocating. Every meeting was a minefield of clipped tones and avoided eye contact, her fingers drumming impatiently against her tablet whenever he spoke. William forced himself to focus, on work, on the pile of spreadsheets threatening to bury his desk, on anything that wasn't Amelia's glare or the cracks in her voice. But the silence was deafening. It was a week before she cornered him in the parking garage, heels clicking sharp and angry against the concrete. William barely had time to blink before she was there, eyes flaring. You're still funding the project, she snapped. He blinked, throat dry. What? The investors, she bit out. The resources, the budget increases, half the partnerships weren't even on my list, and somehow they all got approved? He winced, guilt twisting deep. I just wanted to help. She scoffed, eyes narrowing. Right. Because I'm supposed to believe that's not part of your plan? There's no plan, he said quickly, voice raw. I care, Amelia. About you. About your project. I'd never use you like that. Her jaw clenched. Then why didn't you tell me? Because you wouldn't believe me, he choked out. And yeah, okay, maybe I was scared. Maybe I didn't want you to hate me more than you already do. Her glare faltered, eyes flickering. I know I messed up. He rushed on, voice cracking. I know you have every right to hate me, and if you never want to speak to me again, I get it. But I I couldn't stand to see everything you worked for fall apart because of me. Her breath hitched, shoulders taut. You're an idiot, she muttered, voice trembling. Yeah, he breathed. I know. She let out a shaky exhale, fingers curling tight. God, I hate you, she whispered, but it broke in the middle, something raw and vulnerable bleeding through. William's chest squeezed, hands trembling. Amelia, she glared, eyes glistening. I do, she snapped, voice cracking. Because I care, and that terrifies me, and I hate that you get to just smile and act like it's fine. His heart stuttered painfully. Wait, you care? Her glare could have melted glass. If you repeat that, I'll kill you, she hissed. His breath caught, hope fluttering painfully fast. Right. Noted. She pinched the bridge of her nose, shoulders sagging. God help me, you're hopeless, she muttered, voice thick. He let out a broken laugh, giddy and breathless. Yeah, he choked. I know. Her eyes softened, lips twitching. Just God, don't make me regret this, she sighed, scrubbing a hand over her face. I won't, he rushed out, heart pounding. I swear. She sighed again, exasperated but fond. You're really, really lucky you're cute, she muttered, rolling her eyes. William grinned, heart soaring. So, truce? She snorted, but her eyes were warm. You're an idiot, she muttered, but her hand lingered when it brushed his, soft and steady. And for the first time in weeks, William's chest didn't ache. The drive out of the city was quiet, a winding stretch of asphalt that cut through autumn-touched trees and fields dipped in gold. William's hands were tight on the wheel, knuckles pale, and every few minutes he glanced sideways, half expecting Amelia to change her mind and demand they turn back. But she just leaned back against the passenger seat, eyes soft beneath the lashes she pretended not to curl. When he caught her looking, she arched a brow, smirking faintly. Eyes on the road, heart, she drawled. Right, he blurted, jerking his gaze forward and resisting the urge to bash his head against the steering wheel. Amelia snorted, lips twitching. Relax. I haven't filed the termination papers yet, he groaned. You're not firing me. I'm considering it. She deadpanned, but her fingers were light against his arm, warmth seeping through his sleeve. William's heart stuttered painfully. Please don't, he mumbled. I kind of like this job. Is that right? She hummed, eyes glinting. Well, he admitted, cheeks warming. Mostly I like you. She rolled her eyes, but her hand didn't pull away. Hopeless, she sighed. The cabin was modest, nothing like the sprawling estates William was used to, but nestled between tall pines and draped in amber light, it was warm and quiet and enough. For once, it felt like enough. Amelia stared, brow lifting as he hauled their bags up the steps, nearly braining himself on a hanging planter. A cabin, she said flatly. You planned a weekend at a cabin. William fumbled, nearly tripping over the welcome mat. Is that bad? She crossed her arms, eyes narrowing. You're a billionaire. It's a nice cabin, he protested weakly. Amelia sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. You're an idiot. But you're not firing me, he pointed out quickly. Debatable, she muttered, but her eyes softened, lips curving faintly as she stepped inside. The first few hours passed quietly. Amelia took over the tiny kitchen, swatting William away from the stove with a spatula and a glare that could have withered flowers. He sulked at the dining table, chin propped on his hands. It's my kitchen, he grumbled. It's a rental, she corrected. And I'm not letting you burn the cabin down. I wouldn't. Your lunch exploded in the staff microwave last week, she deadpanned. His cheeks burned. That was one time, she snorted. Sure. They ended up eating in the living room, legs stretched out on the old plaid couch, plates balanced precariously. Amelia snickered every time William dropped something, so often, and rolled her eyes at every apology. By the time the sun dipped behind the trees, William's nerves had frayed to raw edges. Amelia leaned against the porch railing, eyes distant, fingers tracing the rim of her mug. The silence stretched, warm and tentative, until he couldn't take it anymore. He blurted. I'm really glad you didn't leave. She glanced sideways, brow arching. Yet, she corrected lightly. Right, he mumbled, rubbing the back of his neck. Right. Of course. She sighed, exasperated but fond, turning to face him fully. William, she said flatly. Stop panicking. I'm not panicking, he lied, voice pitching high. Her eyes narrowed. You're a terrible liar. Right, he sighed, slumping. Sorry. She huffed a laugh, shaking her head. God, you're hopeless, she muttered, but her fingers were soft when they brushed his wrist, lingering. His breath caught, heart stuttering painfully. Amelia, I didn't stay for the project, she said quietly, cutting him off. Or the investors. Or any of that. His mouth went dry, eyes wide. You didn't? She huffed again, eyes rolling. Honestly, how are you this dense? Genetics? He managed weakly. Amelia snorted, shoulders sagging. God help me, she muttered. I stayed because Her voice faltered, eyes flicking away. Because I care. His heart nearly stopped. Oh, she repeated flatly. He laughed, too high-pitched. I didn't think. She arched a brow, unimpressed. Are you going to finish a sentence at some point? His grin broke through, helpless and wide. You care? Her cheeks warmed faintly. Shut up. He couldn't. Not with his heart slamming against his ribs, words tangling and breaking free before he could think them through. Amelia, me too, he choked. So much. Probably too much. Like a lot. Like I love you, he blurted, voice cracking. She stared, eyes wide. William's breath hitched, panic surging fast and hot. Yes, but God, I'm sorry, that was too fast, Amelia groaned, pinching the bridge of her nose. You're such an idiot. He winced. Right. Sorry. She sighed, shoulders slumping. I'm not firing you, she muttered. Oh, he breathed, relief flooding fast. Good. Her eyes softened, lips twitching. I love you too, idiot, she mumbled, cheeks pink. His brain short-circuited. You do? Say it again and I'll reconsider the firing, she deadpanned. Right. He choked, grin aching wide. Sorry. She sighed, but didn't pull away when he took her hand, fingers trembling slightly. Hopeless, she muttered, but her voice was fond, her eyes warm. William's breath caught, heart fluttering painfully. So, this is probably stupid, but… Amelia arched a brow. Is this going somewhere? He flushed, throat tight. Just would you, move in? Maybe? With me? She blinked, lips parting. I know it's fast. He rushed, voice cracking. And I totally get it if you don't want to, and I'd still support the project, obviously. And you don't have to say yes, and William. She cut in dryly. Yeah? She rolled her eyes, lips curving. You're hopeless, she muttered, but her fingers squeezed his, soft and steady. Fine. Yes. His heart stopped. Yes? Her eyes narrowed. Ask again and I'm rescinding it. Right. He squeaked, grinning like a fool. Right. Okay. She snorted, shoulders sagging. God help me. She muttered, but she was smiling, soft and real, and William's chest ached with how much he wanted this. The stars glinted bright and clear above the cabin, tangled between pine branches and swirling clouds. The night was cool, the air crisp and edged with pine and wood smoke. William's jacket was draped over Amelia's shoulders, her head resting beneath his chin, and his arms wound tight around her like he was afraid to let go. They stood in comfortable silence, the only sound the soft rustling of leaves and the faint chirp of crickets in the distance. William's heart hadn't stopped racing since she'd said yes, every thump heavy and aching with the kind of warmth that made his chest feel too small to contain it. Amelia sighed, leaning into him, her breath fanning warm against his collar. "You're shaking," she muttered. He chuckled, voice cracking. "I'm not." She arched a brow, unimpressed. "Your heartbeat is loud enough to scare off the wildlife." "Well," he muttered, cheeks warm. "Sorry for being excited that my girlfriend doesn't hate me." She snorted, eyes glinting. "Yet." "Right," he said quickly, squeezing her waist. "I mean, no, not right. Just, you're not serious, are you? Keep babbling and we'll see." She deadpanned, but her voice was soft, lips twitching. He huffed a laugh, giddy and breathless. "God, I can't believe you actually said yes." Her eyes softened, fingers curling in his shirt. "You really are hopeless." He grinned, helpless and bright, fingers trembling where they brushed her waist. "Yeah," he choked, voice thick. "But I mean, you're kind of stuck with me now." She sighed, rolling her eyes. "Regretting my life choices already." She muttered, but her arms slid around his neck, warm and steady, and William's heart stuttered painfully. "Please don't," he mumbled, burying his face in her shoulder. I know I'm. God, Amelia, I know I don't deserve you." Her fingers tightened in his hair, breath hitching. "William. I mean it," he rushed, voice cracking. God, you deserve so much better than me. And I promise I'll try. I'll do everything I can to, hey." She cut in softly, fingers brushing his cheek. "Breathe, idiot." He did, shaky and uneven, and her eyes softened, lips curving. "I wouldn't have said yes if I didn't want to," she murmured, thumb tracing the edge of his jaw. "So stop panicking before you give yourself a stroke." He laughed, a wet, broken sound, breath stuttering. "Sorry." She rolled her eyes, exasperated but fond, and pulled him down to kiss him, slow and warm, and William's brain short-circuited completely. Her fingers were soft in his hair, her lips warm and careful, and he could have sworn his heart actually stopped for a second. Amelia sighed when they parted, resting her forehead against his. "You're hopeless," she muttered, but the words were soft and almost fond, and William's grin broke wide and unguarded. "Yeah," he choked, voice breaking. "But, I love you," she huffed, but her cheeks warmed faintly. "God help me," she sighed. "I love you too, idiot." His heart soared, a laugh spilling helpless and giddy from his throat, and Amelia rolled her eyes but didn't pull away, her fingers curling a little tighter in his hair. They stood there for what felt like hours, swaying softly beneath the stars, Amelia's head tucked beneath his chin and his arms wound tight around her waist, warmth unfurling slow and steady in his chest. For the first time in months, the silence wasn't suffocating. It was soft, comfortable, edged with Amelia's breath and the soft rustling of trees, the distant chirp of crickets, and the gentle sway of pine boughs. William exhaled slowly, heart fluttering, and buried his face in her shoulder. "So," he mumbled, voice cracking, "does this mean you're not firing me?" She snorted, lips twitching. "Debatable," she muttered, but her arms tightened, fingers slipping through his hair. "Don't push your luck." He grinned, warmth spreading painfully bright. "Right. Got it." She rolled her eyes, but her fingers stayed soft in his hair, her breath warm and steady against his collar, and William's heart ached with how much he loved her. "I'm serious," he mumbled, voice small. I want to do this right. I want to make this work. Whatever it takes." Amelia's eyes softened, thumb brushing gently over his cheek. "You're already doing fine," she muttered, voice fond. "Stop worrying so much." "But he started, voice cracking. "William," she sighed, exasperated but warm. "Shut up." He did, cheeks burning, and her eyes glinted, lips curving faintly. "You're hopeless," she muttered for the millionth time, but her voice was soft and fond, and William's grin ached with how much he wanted this, how much he wanted her. "I love you," he choked, helpless and breathless. "I know," she muttered, but her cheeks warmed, eyes flicking away. You've only said it like 6 times. Right. He mumbled, flushing. Sorry. She snorted. Idiot. She muttered, but her arms stayed tight around his waist, her breath soft and warm against his collar. They stayed like that until the stars blurred into hazy white streaks, and the air turned crisp with the promise of morning. Until Amelia sighed, her breath warm and even, and mumbled, Fine. You win. He blinked, dazed. Win? What? She rolled her eyes, half asleep. Moving in, she muttered, eyes fluttering. But if you snore, I'm kicking you out. William choked on a laugh, giddy and bright. Right. He squeaked, voice cracking. Totally fair. She sighed, fond and exasperated, and burrowed closer, fingers curling in his shirt. You're hopeless. She mumbled one last time, voice soft and warm and so fond. William's breath stuttered, eyes burning, and he buried his face in her shoulder, chest aching with everything he couldn't say yet. Magic or not, he thought, heart fluttering painfully, this was real. She was real. And for the first time in what felt like forever, that was enough. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave a like, it really helps out the channel. And if you want more heartwarming and emotional stories like this, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this one. I'd love to hear your reactions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.